Welcome to the Everyday Ministry Podcast, where ministers get together to discuss everyday ministry.
Welcome to the Everyday Ministry Podcast. We're a podcast where everyday ministers get together to discuss ministry. This is James White, the pastor at Lighthouse Community Church in the metropolis of Vernon, Alabama.
Metro.
And this is Jamie Owens, a church member at Lighthouse Community Church.
He has the best pastor out there.
And the best spirit on the podcast.
That's right.
This is Daniel Brown, and I am the student pastor at Calera Baptist Church, not to be mistaken for a person who is a student to become a pastor. I am a student pastor to students. I've actually done that one time. I'm not kidding.
Or
I said
as
I'm a
many
student pastor,
people.
and someone asked me, like, you're a student of the pastors? No. So,
Or
which I
as
guess I
many
am,
people.
You have to make sure you clarify that, huh?
Right.
Or as many people refer to them as half pastors.
Yeah.
Or fake pastors.
Yeah. Or director of trips and games. I've been called that too.
Oh,
Babysitter.
babysitter.
Yep, that too. Mm-hmm.
Do dodgeball and provide pizza, and your job's done with, right?
Yep. And Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Don't forget Mountain Dew.
And Mountain Dew. Yeah.
Well, dude, yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, how's everything been going to the fake pastor or student of pastors?
Don't get that started, man. Do not get that started. No, things have been good. I've just been taking it one day at a time. Had lots going on here and there. Nothing major, just typical busyness. Had a quick few-day trip to Denver, Colorado with our pastor and our mission pastor this last week, and had a great time. We got to go to a Colorado Rockies game.
Don't even tell me. I'm about to be jealous because I remember why you went. So
Yeah. And then we also went to a museum out there where they were having an exhibit there just for maybe a 3-month period of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so I got to go out there and see the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that was really, really cool. Getting to see that. It's very surreal when you stand face to face with a document like that. So that was very neat to get to look at that. And then came on back home Friday night, got back home late Friday night and had a good weekend. But just getting geared up for the fall. We got a lot going on. I think I've already shared on previous episodes all that we've got going on with our student ministry and just trying to get things ramped up, get our leaders trained, get ready and focused and hit the ground running for the fall semester.
Now, my wife used to live in Colorado. Is it as beautiful out there as she tells me it is?
It is, man. Colorado is really cool. But I will say I was a little disappointed when we got to the airport and then you look outside, all you see is flat land. It's like Texas. I mean, it is as flat as it gets.
yeah.
And so we were thinking that we may have landed in the wrong airport. But then when you look off in the distance, you see the Rocky Mountains, like they're like painted in the distance. It was beautiful.
Really?
We didn't actually get to go to the mountains, but from Denver, anywhere in Denver, you can see the mountains off in the distance, which was very neat. But it was beautiful, yeah, and the weather was even better. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Is the weather's awesome out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, my week's been going good. We're still waiting on baby number 2. We are pretty close to having her, so we're actually just waiting on that. We will possibly have Allie Rose Owens here by the time this one drops, but if not, it should be not much longer after that, so we're looking forward to that. But everything's been going good on my end. We're just excited for that and getting ready for that.
Well, I'm just getting back from vacation with some friends of ours. Had the opportunity and joy to go to Gatlinburg in North Carolina with a real good friend of mine, Josh Elliott. He's been on the podcast one time before. It's like our second or third episode. He actually proposed to his girlfriend, which is now his fiance, And
Good.
so we
She
went
said
out
yes.
there.
That's a good thing. She said yes.
She said yes.
Oh, that would have
I was
been awful.
nervous.
I don't know why she said yes, but
Yeah, no kidding.
you would just have to know Josh. But no, I'm playing.
I'm just gonna say he looked really good in those pictures. So,
Yeah,
so
she's
he
got him
looked-
working out, so he's losing a lot of
Yeah.
weight.
Hey, I
Yeah.
noticed that.
He's yeah,
He looked pretty fly for a white guy.
I know.
Daddy. Oh my gosh.
Oh, but yeah, we're just getting back from that, so enjoyed that time away and just have a little vacation from life itself. But we move into the conversation tonight. This is something I'm gonna have Jamie and them have the baby because I'm about to actually go on a hospital visit. I don't have to do too many of those. As a pastor of a church of majority 30s and unders, I don't do many hospital visits.
Bring us Mose.
Huh?
Bring us Mose to the hospital.
Bring you Mose to the hospital?
Yes.
I ain't bring you nothing. Bring you a diaper. That's what I'm gonna bring you.
That's the pastor of Lighthouse Community Church, everyone, just so you know.
That's right. I ain't bringing him Moe's. I may get myself some Moe's, but actually Taco Casa, Tuscaloosa. you have to
No,
get Taco Casa.
absolutely not, man.
Y'all
I hate
both,
Taco Casa.
y'all both can get out of here with that. Where's Corey at when you need him?
Crystals.
You know they tore down the one in Tuscaloosa.
They didn't tear it down. They built a new one in the place.
Okay. Anyway, let's get all of this Satan talk out of the way. We all know crystals is from the devil because I mean, who wants soggy
Sorry.
bread? But anyway,
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to announce my resignation from the Everyday Ministry podcast.
well, if that's what separates us, you can go ahead and go, brother. But anyway, as we kind of move into the topic for this week's episode, I wanted to share a quote with you all, and it's from our beloved co-host Chris Norsworthy. And he says, Chris cannot make it because he is struggling to balance work, family, and ministry. And so the struggle is real. We're going to be talking about this evening, really how to balance all of life. Really, as we think of the subject, it's you got ministry, you got work, you got friends, family, kids, and wives there that can just hobbies. For us 5 or 4, if you don't include Corey, we got podcasting we have to do and just so much stuff that goes on in this life. And we just want to talk about the difficulties of it and try to give some advice on how to manage it. Now, we are not experts, as Daniel's about to kind of lead into telling you. We're not experts in this, so we're still trying to figure it out too. So as we get into it, I think Daniel's wanting to share a story with us all and kind of tell us about his day today. So
Yeah, I mean,
how's
it's
that
not
been?
as much a story as it is just kind of truly. I mean, this first part of the episode is so appropriately named. The struggle is absolutely real. Today has just kind of been one of those days where you have 100 things on your plate and not near enough time to get it all done, and so you have to juggle. But between work and ministry meeting that I had with a fellow youth pastor in town, and having to go and pay a bill on our apartment that we just moved out of, getting that out of the way, and then coming home and helping cook dinner and empty the dishwasher and get our daughter fed. And luckily my wife was generous enough to take her and bathe her and do all that kind of stuff so that I could be here with you guys on the podcast. But it's just kind of one of those things that is, you want to make sure that you're not neglecting the things that matter the most. And this podcast is important to me, but at the same time, helping Allie cook dinner and take care of Charlie has got to take priority. And so just really trying to figure out what's an appropriate balance is a difficult thing. And that's on the everyday basis. That's not just on the day where we're going to be recording a podcast episode. But I can confidently tell you that every day something new is being put on my plate, whether it be by myself or by my pastor or a church member or a student or work itself, whatever it might be. It's always something that's being put on your calendar that you have to try to figure out how to incorporate it without it interfering with the things that matter most.
Man, you tell us that, and I'm sitting back and I'm just thinking about just the last few years of my life, and I really think back to it was December to February of, I think it was 2016 and 17, And at that point, our church, we were renting a building, and we had bought a piece of land, and we were getting some units donated by the Alabama Baptist Convention for our church buildings. And that was that season of time. It really went to about May of when we were setting up the buildings and the whole process of cutting down the trees, buying the land, getting everything ready to move the buildings in, and get everything ready at that point. And I look back on that moment of my life. It was also my last semester in my bachelor's program, and I took 15 hours that semester on top of moving buildings, on top of teaching Sunday morning and Wednesday night, and trying to have a relationship with my wife. And I look back, and I really don't remember January to May of that year. And I say that it almost sounds like I'm joking, but I really don't, because I remember it was about a month ago, me and Sarah was talking about something that went on in that month. There's 5 month span, and she was like, "You not remember that?" And I was like, "No, I don't remember that." We ate McDonald's and Jack's and Subway 6 nights a week that time span in our life. And that's not just because we're lazy. It's like I was at the church until like 8 o'clock almost every night in those 5 months. And, and that was only a 5 month span where I had to deal with that. But I think as we're talking about this and we're kind of bringing up this conversation, I think everybody out there can think of those moments in their life. If they're a pastor, a youth pastor, if they're a paid minister on staff, or even if they're just a church member and just volunteering their time to the church, they can all think of some time where it's just like life got super busy, and how do I manage and balance these moments?
Yeah, and I think about my own life and the fact that I work 9-hour days, 4 days a week, and I work a half day on Friday, but I also live an hour away from where I work. So basically 12 hours of the day is spent traveling, working, traveling back home. And so that uses up a pretty big portion of my day, and I have to really be very intentional about how I use the other probably 4 or 5 hours that I have in the day before I have to get in the bed to get ready for the next day. And I know that right now it's a very stressful time for me and my family, learning how to balance that. But it's also a time where I'm learning better how to do such things, how I need to schedule my day in balancing family, balancing work, balancing studying God's word, praying, whatever it may be, balancing all these different things that I have to do in order to get that within a 24-hour cycle.
Yeah, I mean, even right now, the three of us are I don't want to use the word neglecting, but the three of us are sacrificing time with our families, even in this moment, in order to record this podcast. So, I mean, it doesn't matter how you skin it, how you tear it down, how you put it back together. There is a sacrifice that is being made every moment that you decide to do something in your daily life, whether it be, the only time that I would say that something is not being quote unquote sacrificed is when you're spending time with your family. Yeah. Because that is the most important thing that you can do as a husband and as a father.
And I don't disagree with you there by no stretch of the imagination, but even that can become idealistic in our mindset at times, where we can spend all of our time doing that when we need to be doing other things as well. So there has to be a balance in everything that we do in this life. Yeah. I mean, because you can spend all the time with your family, but if you don't go to your job and make a living,
right?
I mean, you're not gonna.
I guess what I meant by that is not that you were attempting to correct me, but to make sure that there's clear understanding. What I meant by that is I don't find myself having enough time to spend with my family to ever get to that point where I feel like I am sacrificing something else, because every time I have to sit down with my family in the living room and just be together, I feel like, man, this is past due. Yeah. And I probably get more time than a lot of husbands and fathers do with my family because of the nature of my job, of what I do. But even then, I still feel like I need more, because just because I'm there physically doesn't always mean that I'm there mentally. Sometimes I've got my computer open in front of me because I'm working on a lesson for Wednesday night. Sometimes I'm planning for next month or whatever it might be. I mean, you never know what it is, but just because I'm there physically doesn't necessarily mean that I'm always 100% of the time there mentally.
Man, I think that's the biggest struggle when it comes to bivocational ministry or anything of that nature. Is I think we're here often physically, but it's not that we're there. We're not there mentally at times. I mean, and I think people struggle with that naturally with the day of technology we live in generally, with cell phones and always texting or addressing kind of issues and what's going on, checking emails, that we can always be there physically and not be there mentally. And it's so easy to fall into that trap for good reasons, like you're saying, but also for bad reasons at times. I mean, even I have to catch myself, times when I'm sitting there spending time with my wife where I may be playing some stupid game that don't amount for anything in this life while I'm trying to spend time with her. And I just pick up my phone and play that game and not even think twice about it. I got to kill those kind of things in my life as well.
Well, probably my biggest temptation, and y'all are speaking from a bivocational minister perspective, but speaking from a church member who may have a 40-hour plus a week secular job perspective, one of my biggest temptations, especially because my job is very physically taxing at times, a lot of times I get to just, sit in the cab and just
Watch the
do
Braves.
that. Yeah, watch the Braves. But no, many times my job is physically taxing. And especially on those days, one of my biggest temptations is to come in and just kind of veg out and lay on the recliner and watch TV until it's time to go to bed and do nothing. Instead of taking that time to talk to my wife, who is a stay-at-home mother, who does not get adult interaction all day long, to speak to her and also to take the time to disciple my child, to help to raise her, to do all these different things. One of my biggest temptations absolutely is to just get home, check out, and relax until time for bed, and then do it again the next day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a temptation for all of us. There's just simply times where not only do you want to unplug from what's going on at work, but it's almost like, like you just said, you put it in the best possible term there, veg out. You just want to think about nothing. When really we don't have that luxury, if you want to call it that. We have responsibility here at home. And I've heard many people say this, but I most recently heard former Auburn football coach Gene Chizik make the statement that you have to give your family your best, not the rest. You can't walk in and just give your family the fumes from the day. You have to give them the absolute best that you have, because they're the ones that you love the most. They're the ones that you have the highest level of responsibility to.
No doubt. And, I think naturally, so often I think of stuff in the perspective of a pastor of some sort rather than just an individual. But I think the same can be said about any man. But no matter what we do in this life, our first priority has to be discipling and leading our families.
Yeah.
And then obviously we may have women that are listening, and that doesn't mean it's not their priority either. They have the same priority of discipling and leading their families in a different capacity. It's just talking about coming together beside one another, leading the family together. And so that role may look different between man and woman, but it's still a priority that has to happen first and foremost in our life. And I really think that's why when you look at the calling of a pastor, you see one of the big things that Paul addresses is, it's leading the family well and having been an example of that. And so,
well, it is our first and greatest mission in the world, is to, especially as men, as leaders in our family, as complementarians as we are, is we know that we are leaders and that we are called to lead and disciple our family. And it is, as I said, our first and greatest mission.
yeah, and I think personally, I would say that balancing this, I know it's a difficult thing, and that's why we're talking about this, why we're talking about juggling the difficulties of this life and balancing everything well. But personally, I would say that doing this well can be one of the number one ways that we show the gospel in our life, in our actions.
Yeah.
Because, in the world we live around, in the world we live in, family dysfunction is irregular. Husbands, not spending time with the kids or not spending time with the wife
We're absent.
or being absent altogether. That's common in the world we live in. And that's why I think it's so important as believers, as disciples of Christ, living these truths out is so crucial in our lives. If it be a pastor or just a believer in general, that this is so important that we balance these things well. And so, kind of want to move the conversation towards that. Is I think we've just laid out the truth of the matter is that it is hard, it's difficult. I don't think I don't do it perfectly. I know I don't. I know that I even take my own time and I'm selfish with it at times. So, what are some ways that we as individuals can be working towards balancing our times? What are some things that we can apply or put into practice that will help or aid us in making sure we are intentional in this area of our lives?
I'd say scheduling it. For me, right now, my wife is beginning kind of a preschool time with our daughter. And part of me helping her in that is when I get in the evening, we eat, we kind of talk during that time. But afterwards, I spend a little bit of time helping her in that with our daughter. We actually are going through a catechism right now, the New City Catechism, which is kind of, I take a little bit of that responsibility of teaching our child that, it's just kind of scheduling that time where you can disciple your family, where you can spend time with your wife and with your daughter and doing these things that matter. I know that for me, if I do not schedule the time, many times I will come in, eat, whatever it may be, and then, like I said before, veg out. But I do believe scheduling that time is very important.
Yeah, and I was going to actually say, pretty much the same thing, that just scheduling, calendaring well, communicating, those are all things that are just good practices to have, and something that I really am currently really striving to do better with. Just getting to a point where it is secondhand nature for me to communicate with Allie first before I officially book or plan anything. So until I communicate things to her, when someone asks me to come and help with something or do something or put something on my calendar, I give them a tentative yes, but I do not make any type of commitment until I'm communicating that with her. Now, I'm not perfect on that all the time. I'll be the first to say that. But I'm striving to get better at it, because I am learning as I'm getting further into marriage and into ministry, how important that is. But also, that's showing her that I value her more as well by letting her know that I want to communicate these things to her. Not that I feel like I have to have her permission, but that I value her opinion in things. And therefore I want to make sure that she's okay with me saying yes to this event or yes to this ministry opportunity, whatever it might be. For me to know that my wife is on board with me doing it before I fully commit to doing it. And then another really simple thing that I've begun practicing, I'm really kind of breaking that practice tonight since we're recording this podcast, but I do my best to try to go to bed when she goes to bed, get in the bed when she does, spend that time laying there next to her, as she's winding down for the night, talking to her if that's what we need to do. And just being there with her. That's really important as well. But beyond that, simple things, helping get our daughter ready for bed at night, helping feed, helping cook, helping do whatever needs to be done. Just being present is something that I've really tried to practice. And if you had her on this podcast with us right now, she'd be looking at me going, well, I don't know, because I'm not perfect at it. It's something that I'm striving to get better at. But I think the first step to trying to get better at is to recognize that I'm not good at it yet, or I'm not perfect at it, if that makes sense.
Well, just to kind of add to y'all's comments, I pretty much do the same things when it comes to my family life. Like me and Sarah, when it comes to scheduling, we both have iPhones, and so we share our calendars. And so like there's certain calendars I don't share with her, like my work calendar, because I put stuff on there like sweep the floors and stuff that I have to do that day at work. And I don't want to bog her down with all that information, but like personal calendar, church calendar, every time she adds something or I add something, we both get notifications of it and we accept it. And it's really helpful with planning doctor's appointments right now with the pregnancy. It's been really helpful in that. The other thing we do is every Wednesday, which this Wednesday is a little different because we do have a doctor's appointment, but every Wednesday is like she gets off at lunchtime. So we have a lunch date every Wednesday. And that's it's really turned into the day where we don't really do anything on Wednesdays other than go on our date, spend time together, and then go to church on Wednesday nights because I don't have to teach on Wednesday nights right now. And so it's been a really good thing for us to schedule that specific day to spend time together. And that doesn't mean we may not go out on Friday or Saturday or go watch a movie or something if we have the funds for it, but we know that day is set, that's what we're going to do together. If it be something at the house or if it be at a restaurant, and that's the day we're going to spend together. And we put that in our calendar so that something doesn't come up. So we don't, if we can avoid it, we don't have to do something differently. But I think, in talking about this, we're addressing more of the family side of it all, but how do you balance the ministry side of things when it comes to your scheduling? Because even like Jamie, Jamie helps a lot at the church as a church member naturally, but also he teaches every other week on Wednesday nights, and he does a scriptural reading and explanation on Sunday mornings. And obviously I pastor and Daniel is a youth pastor. I mean, how do we balance those opportunities? What's your advice in addressing issues in your time in the church?
Well, I would say that for me, it's I have 2 days a week that I'm in the office or fully focused on ministry. That's Mondays and Wednesdays. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I work my secular job. But on those 2 days, I try to give as close to 100% as possible towards ministry needs, whether it be planning, whether it be visiting, whether it be phone calls or meetings or whatever it might be. I try to plan as much as possible on those 2 days. And because it's only 2 days a week that I have to do that, I have to be very efficient with my time. And so I do try to, especially like before I go to bed tonight, I'm going to go ahead and look at my calendar for tomorrow and set up a to-do list of things that I've got to get done tomorrow, people I've got to communicate with, any type of event that I need to work on, phone calls I need to make, whatever it might be. I'm going to do all that before I go to bed tonight so that when I get up tomorrow and get going, I can make the absolute most of my time that I have in my day on Wednesday to focus on ministry. Now, on the days that I do work my secular job, the good thing about that job is that I'm off by 3 p.m., which means there's still some day left that I can still make phone calls or plan or do whatever I might need to do in that afternoon. So I am able to do some ministry work on those days, but Monday and Wednesday are the 2 major days of the week that I am fully focused, of course, besides Sunday. So I just try to make the absolute most of my time, like we've already mentioned, in scheduling and just, really making sure that I am utilizing that time as wisely as possible for the purpose of accomplishing as much as I possibly can on that day.
And on my end, I'll kind of give you some understanding of what I do at Lighthouse Community Church. Is James has been gracious enough to allow me to do the announcements, as well as
my least favorite thing to do. I know, man. I just give opportunities away.
As well as he does allow me to read a scripture and do a little exposition of that as we do a call to worship moment in the beginning of our worship, as well as also have like he said earlier, every other week Bible study that I do on Wednesday night. And so I try to prioritize the different responsibilities that I have. For example, on Sundays with the announcements as well as the scripture reading, I try to, Friday or Saturday, the day before, try to pick out a scripture that will go along with his sermon that I uh, that I believe that he's going to preach that Sunday, because he doesn't really give me a preview, but I know the scriptures he's going to be preaching. So I kind of look for a verse that will go along with that, and take probably an hour or so to exegete that, look over it, the different words, different meanings, and try to come up with something that will give a 5-minute exegesis to the people on Sunday morning, as well as the Sunday when I get there. I get there about 30 minutes early and get the announcements and try to decide how I'm going to give those to the people. So that's kind of how my Sunday morning routine goes, as well as Wednesday night. I try to take Monday and Tuesday night when I get home to study what we are going to be what I'm going to be teaching on Wednesday night, if that's my week to teach, and get that material together and get ready to teach on Wednesday, so that when it comes time that I can come in, get our group together, get everything set up how I need it to be set up, and teach it in a way that will bring the most understanding and the most glory to God in that hour that we have on Wednesday night to teach. So I kind of, prioritize those on different. I would say that I probably split my week in half to be able to prioritize those.
I'll be the first one to admit that I do an absolutely horrible job of managing my time, because
Dude, you were not the only one who would admit that. I am terrible at it as well.
I'm just saying, because I have the joy of, I work at a post office. I work 6 days a week, which when you say that, it sounds like a lot, but when you follow up by saying you get home by lunchtime every day, it's not as bad as it sounds. And so I get home at like 12:15 every day. So in all reality, if I did what I needed to be doing efficiently, then I could have all my church work and school work done by the time Sarah got home, and then have plenty of time with her and doing things around the house. But in all reality, I do a horrible job with that. And so, but some things that I try to do is that each day I do a little bit of sermon prep. If it's reading through the scripture I'm preaching on Sunday, or if it's arcing it out or underlining or doing those small details on it, each day I do that. And I also deal with whatever schoolwork I have to do that week. And I generally do a lot of reading for school and preaching and things like that each day. And so for myself, I'll just admit that I just don't do a great job at it because of the balancing act that goes on with it. And that's kind of why we're having this conversation. The one thing I will say I do well is scheduling. I schedule pretty well. It's just sometimes I don't follow that schedule like I really should. And that's the biggest issue for me.
Yeah, I don't think any of us on here would be willing to say that we've got all of this figured out and what we're discussing here. I think we all have areas that we need to work on. And, really and truly, that's why these different discussions and this particular discussion today is almost a little bit convicting. Because of the simple fact that we're looking at it going, hey, this is what I know I need to do. Like, we have the tools and the head knowledge to know what needs to be done in order to be a good father and a good husband and a good minister and a good coworker or whatever it might be. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we always implement the things that we know. It's a big difference between having head knowledge and having discipline.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt. And, one thing that we're adding this month to our podcast format is this idea of a challenge on each episode. And you're going to see that on the next episode that we're going to release on the first episode of the Spiritual Disciplines. We leave you with a challenge of Bible intake, and really want to do the same thing with this episode. And I haven't spoke to Daniel nor Jamie on what this challenge is going to be, but I'm going to throw it out there for us anyway. And so this isn't only a challenge for the listeners, but this is a challenge that we're going to embark on ourselves. And what I have for us is, in this next month, before we get on here again and talk about whatever ministry topic we talk about on the third Monday of the month, is take out a piece of paper or find a document online that you can print off that lays out a week's schedule, an hour a day, and take out and block out your time each day and of what you're going to do. And then try to find a time of scheduling, your Bible study time and your family time and the things that you have to do each day. Block those out and then kind of see how much free time you have left out. I actually had to do this, and I'll redo it, but I had to do this for a class I took in New Orleans that I went to campus for a conference, and it became a class as well. And I had to do this for this class. And the guy made the point, the guy presenting it, he made the point of, in all reality, we spend like so much time on social media and on things of that nature that we don't even realize we're wasting all of that time in our day. And so my challenge, if you guys are cool with it, is that what we are going to commit to doing, and we're calling the listeners to do, is find a piece of paper or a document that shows an hour. It breaks down each day by the hour, and block that out. Block out the time you spend sleeping, the time you got to work that day, the things that you have to do first and foremost, and then schedule the rest of the time. And not to be legalistic or anything of that with your time, but to kind of show you where your free time lies, to kind of be intentional in planning out the rest of your time.
Your iPhone calendar actually has that exact setup on the daily planner. When you go into the daily calendar, it works just the same way. So just for our listeners,
maybe do it on there.
If you can't, if you are wondering where to go to find something like that, if you have an iPhone, Jamie, you can speak to the Android group, but there's probably like one person. But you can use that as a resource as well, because that works good too. I've actually used my iPhone calendar a lot. The good thing is it syncs up with my MacBook, so I can see on my iPad, iPhone, MacBook, whatever it might be. And then, like you said, Allie has a calendar that's linked to my calendar too, so she can see the things that I have going on as well.
And I have to defend my Android. Yes, we do have a calendar, and yes, we do have that same function. So,
okay, that's good. There you go. There you go, Android people. You have that same function too.
And you may not want to share that daily breakdown with your spouse, because they may not want to know that 15 minutes you're going to eat a bologna sandwich or something for your lunch. But, break it down and kind of lay it out there. And I really do think that would be a good thing for you to do. I think you'll recognize the time that you have that you're kind of skipping over. And if not, if nothing else, it'll kind of help you plan out your day. And then one other thing I want to recommend, and if you're listening to this, you're probably already like a podcast type person, because come on, you're listening to a podcast. But, I think about somebody like Jamie or even Daniel. His day job is driving a truck all day. I don't know how much he can use headphones and stuff. But I know, like Jamie, as he said earlier, he drives an hour each day to work and an hour back from work, right?
Yep.
And so take time in those times where you're stuck in a vehicle or stuck doing, miscellaneous things, that you can listen to, maybe even listening to the Bible being read to you, or listen to a podcast or a sermon or something that's going to edify you. Audiobooks is a fantastic thing. I know my first semester I took systematic theology. I bought 2 of the audiobooks because they had me reading like 3 books a week, and it was like 100 pages. And the one thing I realized was I had the time in between driving from work to home that I could be listening to this and then taking some of it in. So, find some ways, unique ways of taking advantage of the time you do have that may save you 20 minutes that you can be spending with your family or something of the nature. That's the challenge for you, and some advice. Guys, I actually don't have a plug of the week this time, so I can't make fun of Jamie this time. I just can't do it. Daniel, you got anything for us?
To be completely honest, I don't either, man.
What? Come on, guys. So you're putting it all on me.
What you got for us?
It's all
I actually do have something. It is not related whatsoever to what we've talked about.
Of course,
that's okay. That's the beautiful thing about the plug of the week.
But as long as you got something, because me and Daniel ain't got nothing.
Well, look, I discovered this today. Okay, so if it's not good, it's not my fault. I'll just put it like that, because I haven't really explored it that much yet.
It's his plug, but if it's bad,
but I will say it came from a good source, so I'm trusting it. It is World Magazine, If you like daily news, or not really daily, but a periodical news source, this is actually a bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks, they send out a magazine that is kind of a overview of the news that is going on at the moment, national and international, but is from a Christian worldview. So this actually does have a Christian worldview understanding. It's called World News or World Magazine, and if you actually they have a offer. If you go to, let me look it up so I don't tell you the wrong website.
Man, this is the longest plug of the week ever.
Listen. GetWorldNews.org. You get 3 months for free. If you would like to try that out, that's what I'm actually doing right now. Like I said, I heard about it today, so I'm actually going to try out the 3-month membership for free. You don't have to put in any credit card information, debit card, whatever. You don't have to put in any financial information. So try that out. It's a good resource for current events from a Christian worldview.
Sweet.
Well, Jamie has the singular plug of the week, and because of that's,
Dude, I'm like the only one here who even cares about daily news.
Man, I listen to Ben Shapiro, and I listen to The Briefing. That's all I can do with my life. I ain't got time.
Daniel, what do you think
I ain't
about
got time.
Shapiro?
I ain't got time for this. This is what we're talking about right now. You know what I'm saying?
I get a lot of my news from Rick and Bubba in the morning. No, but most of the time I do. I listen to The Briefing with Al Mohler, and
you gotta check out Shapiro.
Rick and Bubba do a good job. Sometimes they're a little skewed. Sometimes they are a little too right winged. Not that I'm by any means a Democrat there, but we won't get into politics. But they do sometimes go a little too far to the right in some of the things that they talk about. They give biased news at times, not all the time, but most of the time they give biased news. So I don't only get my news from them because I do want to be able to look at things from a little bit more of an unbiased opinion. But I listen to them a lot, and then I also listen to Al Mohler, as well as from my perspective, I look at the oh man, I'm blanking right now. What's the Baptist newspaper that they put out weekly?
Baptist Press.
Talk about the Alabama Baptist?
Yes, the Alabama Baptist newspaper that comes out weekly. I look at that as well, and that helps me keep up with some different things going on, at least in the Southern Baptist Church and in the Baptist Church in Alabama.
Baptist Press is a good one to look into as well. Hey, and while we're talking about news, there's actually a podcast that I will throw out there while we're on that subject. It's called The World and Everything in It. I know that's kind of a strange title for a podcast. Yes, but it's actually a 30-minute or so, 5-day-a-week daily podcast. So if you would like to check that out, that gives you a little overview of what's going on in the world. But
guys, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and as we said earlier, we do not practice this perfectly by any stretch of the imagination, and that's why we wanted to address things like this, because we want you to know and understand that we're trying to manage these things of life as well as the listeners are. And so don't forget the challenge. Block out your time on a piece of paper or on your iPhone or Android phone, and block out your time. See what time where you're spending most of your time. See the time that you have free, and that way you can kind of plan out things a little better. But guys, we want to encourage you to like and share this Facebook page, and just really want to encourage you to be a good steward of the time in which God gives you and provides for you each and every day. This has been the Everyday Ministry Podcast, a podcast where everyday ministers get together to discuss ministry.
If you're encouraged by what you hear, please go like our Facebook page, share the episodes, and rate the podcast on iTunes. Don't forget that a new episode drops every first and third Mondays. Our prayer is that these episodes are an encouragement to you and that you would be faithful in the ministry that God has placed you in.
I'm sick of running into the wind. Distracts my back, about time to start kicking and screaming. Gotta get out of here fast. I'm running. I'm heading back to my roots and routes and all the roads that lead to you. Setting off on a one-way train to a place where they know my heading back